Hello and welcome to the Marriage Course. It's great that together you've made the decision to join us, and we hope you'll find this course both enjoyable and helpful.
Over the next 7 sessions, we'll be looking at how any of us can build a healthy marriage. Whether you've been together a short time or for many years, if this is your first marriage or a subsequent one, we hope you'll find the material relevant and useful. Our vision for our own marriage and our hope for yours is that it might last a lifetime. But we know that that takes an investment of time and energy. And we're so glad you've decided to make that investment by coming on the course.
There may be some of you who aren't married, but have been living together for a while. We also want to welcome you and explain that while we'll be talking about marriage and referring to husbands and wives, we're confident you'll be able to apply everything you hear to your relationship.
We find people do the course for all kinds of reasons. Some to invest in an already great marriage, others because they're struggling for one reason or another. And we know some come as a last attempt to rescue a failing marriage. Some people come willingly, others are dragged along by their partners. But whatever their motivation or reasons for coming, thousands and thousands of couples have talked about the difference the marriage course made for them. Here's some feedback from a few people who've done the course.
I think the most helpful thing about the marriage course was it gave us 2 things. One was just tools to learn how to communicate better and explore any issues that we had, and also it gave us space to talk about some issues that we hadn't previously talked about, which was really helpful.
I think just taking the time out during the week, which is so busy, just to have David and I, they're the 2 of us, and the exercise time just was really helpful for us.
It was a large number of small pointers which, when put into practice, made a difference to our relationship.
Yes, it was just realising that however good the relationship was, there were things that you could do to make it even better.
I think that the marriage course is life-changing.
Yeah, and it's a great time to be able to communicate with each other and understand more about each other.
We separated for about 8 months, 2 years before we did the marriage course. And when the marriage course came along, for me, it was a godsend, because we were desperate to find anything that would help us to communicate better. And it helped me in that way.
Yes, it did, and it helped me as well. It gave me some really good tools that I could apply to the marriage, just to keep it ticking over and making it work.
In the past, I think I tended to get really grumpy and sulk for a couple of hours if I was upset, and it certainly taught me to just forgive and forget a whole lot quicker and move on. And it just makes it all that much easier, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It makes it an awful lot easier.
It has equipped us to deal with anything that comes.
And there's very, very few issues now that we can't take hold of and run with, especially if we give it the time that it's really deserves.
Yeah. We don't see each other as the enemy anymore.
No.
We'll be hearing more from those couples and others over the course. We call them our sofa couples, and if you've ever seen the film When Harry Met Sally, you'll know where we got our inspiration.
We started running the marriage course in 1996 at our church in London, Holy Trinity Brompton, or HTB as it's known. In our experience, most people have 2 fears about doing a course like this. One fear is that they'll be required to reveal intimate details of their relationship to other people, and they don't want to do that. The second, and often greater fear, is that their husband or wife will have the opportunity to reveal intimate details of their relationship to other people, and they certainly don't want to risk that.
If that's you, you'll be pleased to know that there's a rule on the marriage course that you won't be asked to discuss anything private about your relationship with anybody else.
But you will have to talk to each other. And we'll be stopping at various points to allow you as a couple to discuss issues that we've raised or to work through an exercise in the manual. These discussion times are the most useful part of the course for many couples.
The marriage course, the content was just so applicable to us. We felt like it was all our marriage we could apply to every single session of the marriage course. So it and the talks were good and they were short, and the times we had together to talk were the most important parts of the whole thing.
In a moment, we're going to get you to think back to when you first met. That'll be a lot more recently for some of you than for others. But first, we want to tell you something about ourselves and a bit of the story about how we got together.
I was 18 years old. I'd just left school and was going on holiday to Southwest Ireland. I arrived at Swansea Docks in an old green Mini and got in line for the car ferry. I was fascinated by a girl who was struggling to peel a sticker off the back of the car in front of mine. I sat and watched her for several minutes. Then a great friend of mine called Penny suddenly appeared at the car window and said, "I want you to meet my friend Scylla." And she introduced me to this very pretty girl peeling off the sticker. I was even more intrigued when she spoke to me. We ended up in holiday cottages next door to each other for the next 2 weeks. I fell madly in love, but I didn't dare say anything about it to her just in case she didn't feel the same way.
Well, I too had fallen for Nicky and didn't dare say anything to him in case he felt nothing for me. Well, 12 days into the holiday, we were in this huge old house playing Murder in the Dark, a game that's played almost entirely with the lights off. And Nicky and I just happened to find ourselves alone in a room at the far end of the house. And I am absolutely convinced I engineered it.
And I think I did. But whichever it was, that's when we first kissed. So we discovered that our feelings were mutual and we started going out. We got married 4 years later.
And our experiences over the last 30 years or so have been typical of many couples. There have been good times and bad, celebrations and challenges, as well as various fashions and hairstyles. We've moved house 4 times. We've experienced the birth of our 4 children together, as well as all the hundreds of broken nights that followed. And we've known the exhaustion and the joy of having young children, and also the frustrations and the fun of parenting teenagers.
We've had times of illness and financial hardship, as well as times of great memories and laughter. We've enjoyed growing together and getting to know each other better over the years. 3 of our children have left home now, and the 2 eldest are married. So we've been learning what it means to be in-laws.
That's a bit about us. Now we want you to spend a few minutes thinking back. We want you to tell your husband or wife your strongest memory of the first time that you met and what first attracted you to them. We've called this first session Building Strong Foundations, and we want to start by asking the question, what is marriage? That may seem an obvious question, but in today's society, marriage provokes all kinds of reactions. We asked a selection of people on the streets around the world, what's the point of marriage? This is what they said.
I don't think it's a point of marriage because I mean, if you're going to be with somebody, you're going to be with somebody.
It's what people are taught, that that's what you do in later life, so people think this is what I should do. It's like go to university, get a job, get married.
I think it's a great thing if you meet somebody that you could spend your life with and have that comfort and stability.
It's the ultimate act of commitment.
To get a life partner, you can share the entire life with them.
It's so nice to, I guess, to stand in front of your friends and celebrate your relationship.
Le mariage, ça sert à rien, il n'y a que des histoires d'amour, il n'y a pas de mariage, j'ai divorcé et aujourd'hui je vis à 2 et c'est formidable.
It's all about love, giving love, taking love, sharing, understanding.
Companionship and commitment, right? With someone that is your best friend, your lover, forever.
You just basically done locked yourself down to some laws, you know. That's all marriage is, basically a statement from the law.
We don't feel a need for a piece of paper or an institution which is going to hold us together.
I know some people see it as just a piece of paper, but I think if you have problems as boyfriend and girlfriend, it's easier to walk away, whereas if you're married, you have to think about things twice.
Relationships are great, but as soon as you get married, it's all downhill, I'm afraid.
2 people are committed. It binds them together, although it's just a legal certificate. It's a commitment.
In old days, that was the in thing, you know, to get married.
But because you were in love and you wanted to, really.
And we loved each other.
Bah, écoutez, en principe, ça devrait concrétiser un couple qui s'entende bien et qui a décidé de construire quelque chose. Je ne dis pas que c'est éternel, mais on essaye que ça dure quand même. Enfin, notre génération, c'était en fait ça. Hein.
Marriage is not as important as it used to be.
Deep down inside, marriage is still it, no matter what people say.
I still like the idea of marriage, but, you know, give me 15 years.
As you can hear, there are a lot of different views about marriage out there. We believe marriage is the joining together of two individuals to make one unit. That's how it's put in the first book of the Bible. In Genesis chapter 2, it says, "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh." The best visual aid of a marriage is to take two pieces of paper and glue them together. You create, in effect, one new piece of paper with two sides. That's why Jesus said of married couples, "They're no longer two, but one. What God has joined together, let no one separate."
Marriage is therefore the closest, most intimate human relationship possible. Some people ask, but what about a parent and child? After all, a baby starts off life within the mother, physically attached. But the task of parenting is to encourage increasing independence in children, both physically and emotionally, in order that they can one day set up a home of their own. Marriage is the other way round. Marriage involves two people who at one time were complete strangers to each other. They meet, get married, and embark on a relationship that's designed to be one of increasing intimacy and growing interdependence.
Well, Pete and I have been married nearly 30 years now, and sometimes we can't quite believe it, but it's excellent. We just know each other so well now, and we've got so many shared memories. We've had our children together, obviously, and as well as the ups, we've shared the downs, but we've learnt from them.
Yes, I'd echo that for me, the two most important things are that bank of memories that we can draw upon through good times and bad times. They really help us when we're facing decisions or just reflecting over a cup of tea in the evenings. The other thing, and perhaps the most important, Jill knows me like no other person, and sometimes I guess better than I know myself, and that can only come from a relationship that's been long-lasting and enduring.
But that sort of togetherness is not automatic. There are pressures on every marriage that threaten to push us apart.
The biggest pressure for us in our marriage was having a son who was a drug addict for 8 years. And that really put three people in our relationship. There was three people in our marriage, apart from our other children. And it became fairly clear at one stage that one of the three had to go, and Carol and I decided that it wasn't going to be one of us. After we'd done the marriage course and our son was no longer on drugs, we were able to then refocus on ourselves, recommit to each other, look at what each of us was doing and regain all of those lost years. And that was the beautiful part about having done the course and what it did for us.
I always love hearing about really long marriages. An elderly couple was celebrating their platinum wedding anniversary. That is 70 years. A young radio reporter was sent to cover the story and did his best to make the old man, who was very deaf, understand his questions. 70 years is a long time, he shouted in the old man's ear. "Have you ever contemplated divorce?" The old man toyed with the question for a few moments. Then he replied, "Divorce? Never. But I have considered murder several times."
Marriages move gradually through life's different seasons. Some arrive without us realising it. Others we look forward to. Each season requires a couple to adapt to the new situation in order to keep closely connected.
To invest in our own marriage is vital. I mean, you know, all the time we're having to work at different aspects of our marriage, and certainly the different phases that we go through, in marriage, with Dave's been the last 3 years working really hard away in London, and we're in Manchester, and so that's been something that's put a big pressure on the family, that we've had to really, really make sure, especially, that we've spent time together, just the two of us. So that has been vital, I think, hasn't it?
I think it's a daily process. I mean, I think we've realised as we've gone forward that it is a continual process, and daily you can put things in place to help and protect and enhance it. And it's very easy to, I suppose, drift apart. It doesn't take many days to not communicate and gradually drift.
We're going to talk about some of the stages that many marriages go through and the challenges that typically accompany each season. We recognise that not every couple will experience all of these stages. Some people marry later in life. Some marriages involve taking on stepchildren, while some face the agony of being unable to have children.
We're going to start with the first season of marriage, which in many ways is like spring. Because spring is the season of newness, when things start to grow and new plants appear out of the ground.
It's the same in a marriage. The early years are a season of discovery. Some find this time exciting. Others experience difficulties they hadn't anticipated as they adjust to their new situation. But for all couples, there will come a time, sooner or later, when the initial infatuation wears off. We take off those rose-tinted glasses and start to realise that our husband or wife isn't quite as perfect as we'd once thought.
When we first got together, we were at school. I was 15 and Sam was 17, and he had a car, which was one of the main reasons I was attracted to him, because I lived so far away from school and I needed a lift in every day. And he was very handsome as well, of course, although he did have a side party, but that's not the case any longer. And he used to arrive. We needed to be at school by 8:30, and we used to do a half-an-hour journey in a very short amount of time. And it was fun, it was exciting. However, now that we've been married for 7.5 years, I like to leave slightly longer to get anywhere. And traffic in London actually means that we can't go in and out of the traffic as perhaps once we used to 10 years ago.
With 2 kids.
Yes, with the 2 children. So although he's bought himself a motorbike, he needs to realise that we're now in a car and there's 2 children in the back. Okay. And we need to allow a little longer to get to places.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To give you an example from our own marriage, one of the things that first attracted me to Nicky was his optimism. But a little way into our marriage, I realised that he has an extraordinary capacity to be very over-optimistic. Nicky's very good at do-it-yourself, or DIY, and I remember an occasion when we'd been married for about a year. He started to build some new shelves in our sitting room, and he assured me he'd easily get them finished over the weekend. Well, for the next 2 months, every time we wanted to use the sitting room, we had to kind of pick our way through piles of books, move all of Nicky's tools that were strewn around the room, waiting for the next opportunity to do a bit more. And to be honest, that drove me mad.
Another thing we discover in the early years of marriage is just how different we are. Differences aren't a bad thing. We must accept them along with the frustrations they bring and learn to adjust to one another.
I'd say that we're different to each other in a lot of ways.
Nearly every way.
Yeah, I'm quite good at numbers, quite good at directions and sums, and not so good with people and making sure that everyone's welcomed and hosted and that sort of thing. And Lisa's a lot louder and...
Definitely louder, yeah.
And all those things. Brilliant with people, not so good with numbers, no good at all with directions.
Actually, the volume thing was a big thing for us, because when we first got married, I'm just a loud person. I'd get inside the house and I'd make some noise, and David was constantly just asking me just to tone it down all the time, and I didn't understand, and I now realise that that's just the family he's come from, that's where he's come from, and he's quieter, and so we try and find a balance.
Yeah.
The next season of marriage is rather like summer. The summer is often a time of increased activity. This may be the time when children come along, careers are demanding, mortgages get larger, the list of DIY gets longer, and life can seem unbelievably busy. If you have young children, you may well be suffering from long-term sleep deprivation. You may be dealing with toddler tantrums, picky eaters, or children who believe they don't need to sleep. We remember that stage well.
I think as well the different phases puts pressure on your relationship because the focus can so easily slide over to just the children.
Yeah.
And when they're first born again, and in the early years, it's very easy to focus just on the children, and you've got to make time again for each other and remember why you're married, and not just focus on children. And that's right the way through the different phases and different seasons in the children's lives.
And children are very clever at, how do you say, coming to me and saying, "Is it okay, Mum, if I do this?" And then I'll say no. And they'll go to Dave and say, "Is it okay, Dad?" And Dave will say yes, thinking, not knowing that I've said no. So the pressure's there that you have to work out.
Well, for some couples, this season of marriage brings the pressure of looking after young children. Other couples may be struggling to conceive. The pressures of trying to get pregnant can be huge.
We have, as a couple, come under pressure trying to conceive, and we found it really interesting because it feels that even just in that issue, we've gone through seasons. We started off obviously very hopeful, I think, as most people do, and quite good at sharing our feelings with each other and how we were doing. And then as we realised that the treatment wasn't working for us, we found that discussing things at times became a lot harder. And there were times when certainly having a discussion was only brought about because the person who was doing okay that particular day asked the right question. At the end of all the treatment that we went through, which was unsuccessful, we did find that our marriage actually came out a lot stronger.
Yeah, I think it's we feel much stronger as a couple because we've been through something that's pretty stressful, pretty tough, and we got through it, and we got through it together, and it was really a teamwork that we supported one another when the other one was having a really hard time with it. And I think we can always look back on that and think, yeah, we got through it and we did it together.
The next season of marriage is like autumn or fall. Autumn is a time of richness and maturity. We're reaping the benefits of what's gone before. By now, our marriage is much more established and may well have weathered some tough times. Autumn weather in the UK is often stormy and changeable. In this season of marriage, there may be teenagers in the house.
For many parents, this is emotionally the most exhausting stage of parenting. There are lots of new hormones flying around and lots to worry about, such as the time they come home at night or don't, the time they get up in the morning or don't, getting them to do their homework or worrying about who they're spending time with.
We have a 7-year-old daughter in our house, and the pressures of having a growing young lady is quite a challenge for us. We found it sort of odd because she's obviously wants to push the boundaries, wants to move on into the world and do things her way, and it's quite hard because I think when she was younger we could become quite a good unit, and we'd have more control, I guess, and she'd come out with us and we'd be much more of a closer family unit. I think both of us have struggled that she wants to now become a young woman by herself. So I can understand it being a woman having gone through that myself, but it's a little more difficult for you being a dad with his princess.
Yes, I think from a father's point of view, of course, your daughter's out there now, going out in the wide world, and there's a safety issue that you're going to get concerned about. But also, of course, being a teenager now, that she's bringing a lot of friends home. The house is a lot more energetic, sometimes too noisy.
There can be a temptation in this season to try to deal with our fears and challenges on our own. But actually, more than ever, we need to give each other support and encouragement.
Now we come to the next season of marriage, winter. Winter is different again. This, for many, is the empty nest stage when children may have left home, jobs may be plateauing, and couples often have more time and space to be together.
For me, the empty nest stage was a little more difficult at first than I thought it might be. Our children, we had a daughter, son, and granddaughter all living with us, and they moved out within just a few weeks of each other. So we went from having a family of 5 to just James and I. We weren't used to the quietness, I think. communication, we had to kind of relearn what it's like to communicate one-on-one and have this quiet home where we could really do what we wanted to do and not a lot of distraction and really no one else to talk to. So, and there was some sadness there. There was definitely a pull on my heartstrings because the kids were such a part of our life. But as it grew, our intimacy and just we could watch a movie, do whatever we wanted. We found we were actually having date nights at home, just fun times, watching movies, just sitting and enjoying a cup of coffee together was all new because there wasn't a million distractions. We could really converse.
This season can also be a time of new opportunities. You may have more time to visit friends and family, to travel, take up a new hobby or channel your energies into voluntary work. For many couples, it can be the most exciting stage of their marriage.
But this season can also be a hard one for some. More marriages are breaking down at this stage of life than ever before. When children leave or jobs end, some couples may feel they have nothing to say to each other and little in common anymore. Whether it's during this season of winter or one of the other seasons, when a marriage breaks up, it's never sudden. It will be the result of a process of growing apart.
The first thing is that life gets busy, especially when the children came along. We were focusing very much on them and not on our relationship. And I guess it's so typical, but so true. Career began to be important, certainly in my life and for Jill at times over the 30 years too. We worked so hard that we found no time for each other. And those factors meant that we had lost the art of conversation with each other at a meaningful level. It became all practical.
Yes, it really communicating. I think that's, yes, we weren't really. We were with the children. I think we were building good relationships with them, and we still do, but we'd neglected our relationship. We lost that, really.
In today's consumer society, we've got used to the idea that if something isn't working, rather than repair it, it's cheaper and easier to throw it away and get a new one. People can think the same way about relationships.
If the relationship is difficult or unsatisfying, some people choose to leave it. However, they end up suffering the terrible pain of a marriage breakup. They're separating not two independent people, but two who've been made one. And if I were to try to separate these two pieces of paper, I wouldn't be able to do so without causing great damage to both. Every marriage needs to be worked at through all the different seasons. This next clip comes from Rob Parsons, who heads up the UK organisation Care for the Family, and who, with his wife Diane, has been a great inspiration to us in the areas of marriage and family life.
I honestly believe, I may be wrong, I believe that every marriage goes through a time where at least one of the partners does not feel in love, where everything screams out, let go, it's over. And unless we're prepared to fight to keep love alive, unless we're prepared to work at relationships, and sometimes that really is work. We don't want to do it, we don't feel like doing it, all we want is out. Unless we're prepared to do that, we will never find a relationship that lasts at all with anybody. And I think in our modern world, it's very easy for us not to do that. We're taught that emotions and feelings are the most important things. I often meet people who say, I don't feel in love anymore. I'm walking out of this. And I say, no, you must try to fight to keep love alive. And I often meet people and their marriage is broken and they look back and think, if only I had tried harder. It was worth fighting for.
If your marriage is going well, it's wonderful that you're here to invest for the future. We know for ourselves, being involved in the course regularly is hugely beneficial.
But if you're struggling in your marriage, we want to encourage you. It can be restored. We've seen couples on this course dismantling the wall that has built up between them.
There was a time in our marriage where we did start to grow apart, and we ended up spending about 8 months separate, and it was like building a wall because we stopped communicating, And each time a jibe or a dig or a sarcastic joke at the other's expense got made, it was like another brick in the wall, until eventually the wall was too high and we couldn't even peer over it, much less see each other at the other side of it. And how we dismantled that wall was through communication and realising that we really loved each other and we really wanted the marriage to work. And we had to be humble. We had to own our faults and take responsibility. And together we managed to, brick by brick, dismantle the wall until we could really see each other again.
I think for me, I had to understand that the marriage, I want the marriage to work, but that meant something had to change, you know, whether it's our attitudes to each other. I think we had to we had to establish trust, didn't we, between us to start with, and then start to communicate and court again and have a laugh again and build it back up again nice and slowly. You know.
Yeah, the laughter had gone. And we started to laugh again.
We're now going to give you some time to reflect on what you've heard so far, to talk together about what pressures you've worked through up to now in your relationship and what pressures you're currently facing. Take it in turns to listen to each other. We now want to look briefly at what we'll be covering over the whole course. We've created a diagram we call the marriage wheel to illustrate the topics covered and how they build on each other.
We believe the first 7 sessions provide the tools needed to build a healthy marriage that can be sustained over a lifetime. In this first session, Building Strong Foundations, we look at the importance of making time for each other and recognising each other's emotional needs.
The second session is about the art of communicating well. In other words, knowing how to talk and how to listen effectively.
On the session on resolving conflict, we look at how to tackle issues and differences between us without the need for shouting or sulking.
Then in the next session, we look at forgiveness. Practicing forgiveness allows us to be free from the ways that we've hurt one another in the past.
Session 5 is important for all of us, whether or not our parents are still alive. We explore how our childhood experiences of family life have affected our own marriage and family. We also look at how we can build healthy relationships with our wider family.
Session 6 is when we focus on how to keep sex alive throughout a marriage.
And finally, Session 7 is about discovering the ways each of us feels loved. This is a very positive session to end on, and many couples find this the most enjoyable part of the whole course.
You'll see there are 2 other parts to the wheel. One is the rim, and this holds the wheel together. The rim represents commitment, which is an essential part of marriage. And for some couples, at certain times in their relationship, it can be the only thing that keeps them together.
Many people today are afraid of the commitment that marriage involves, or maybe they don't see the need for it. Perhaps they've experienced parents going through a painful divorce, or they believe having children or buying a home together is enough. However, when couples do choose to make a marriage commitment to each other, they discover a deeper level of trust and intimacy in their relationship.
Perhaps this is because marriage involves promising to be loyal, to stick together, and to work through difficulties and problems. A good marriage is where love and faithfulness meet together.
The last part of the wheel is the hub, and that represents our core values. For Sunil and myself, God is at the centre of the wheel to represent the effect of having him at the heart of our marriage. We'll be speaking later on in the course about one particular way in which our faith makes a big difference to us, and how we've found that having God at the centre of our marriage helps the wheel to go round more smoothly.
While occasionally we'll talk personally about our Christian faith, mostly we'll be talking about the practical tools that are needed to sustain a lifelong marriage.
The difference the marriage course made for me was that I learned that marriage requires skills. I only had one model for marriage in my life, and that was my parents. Didn't have any other relatives in Canada. And they had a good marriage, but it was just one role model. And there's a lot of things they did well and a lot of things they didn't do well. And I just learned some skills to be married.
And I think what I learned from the marriage course is that you have to always work at your marriage. It just doesn't happen. And that's the whole thing of investing in time in your marriage and in your relationship with one another. I think, and the other thing is that the marriage course gave me confidence that no matter what we would have to deal with in life, we'd have the skills and we'd be equipped to deal with those challenges.
Our hope is that on the marriage course you'll grow closer through the time you spend looking at these issues together and through increasing your understanding of each other. The discussions you have together will be more important than anything you hear from us.
We hope that overall the course will be enjoyable for you and that you find yourselves laughing together. However, there may also be tears as you discuss and work through some of the harder issues. But we want to say, please don't be embarrassed about that. You won't be alone.
Every session, we're going to feature a filmed interview with a couple who've done the course. Our first couple is called Doug and Angela, who did the marriage course 8 years ago when they'd been married for 2 years. And they're talking about how the course helped them to build strong foundations for their marriage.
We'd been married a couple of years, and I think we just thought, why not go ahead and do it? We didn't have any issues in our marriage, but we thought, let's do it as a preventative.
And then suddenly this bomb got dropped on us.
We had every right, I suppose, to fall apart and collapse under the stress and crumble. And yet, a lot of things that we learned on the course, we've been able to apply depending on where we are in our lives and the different seasons we've gone through.
I'm not a big fan of kind of group things, group therapy. I was very pleasantly surprised, actually. What was great is that we just spent just one-on-one time.
They keep it really lighthearted, and yet you get through meaty stuff. We know that we've committed, and no matter what's gone on during our week or with the schedule, that we've got that one night that is almost like a date for us. One thing that we did find at the beginning was how different we are. Whilst we understood that we did things in different reasons, we didn't understand why or where it came from.
We were brought up very, very differently, had very different backgrounds. Together, we had to redefine who we were and what our house rules were and how we do things. There are many tools that we picked up. Conversational styles, dealing with conflict.
Where one might be likely to withdraw, the other one wants to confront it and come straight in. Yeah, listening skills. Wow, we learned a lot about listening.
How to sort of speak each other's language, if you like, and knowing how to love Angela the way that she needs to be loved. Enforcing in your marriage a date night every week is just a really great practice.
Yeah, and that really does become a discipline because we know how busy lives get, and you start looking in your diary, it gets fuller and fuller. But to know that one night we will not let other things crowd that out. That is just for us. Just to have fun and remember, why we're together. We're not married just to be mama and papa and work and get through our days and the admin of the day, but to go out and have fun and really enjoy each other and laugh together. And I think it's even more important now that we have children. What should have been a real high for us, Doug was graduating from business school. We were 4 weeks away from having our second baby born.
And then suddenly this bomb got dropped on us, and I was diagnosed with this tumour in my head, and I was going to be out of action as a bedridden mess for the next 2 months.
What could have suddenly sent us into a complete spiral actually made us more of each other's rock. Because we knew how to communicate. We weren't running from each other, trying to cope on our own. We coped as a team.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that we had already built into our lives as a result of doing the marriage course became second nature in getting through that time. Marriages get a battering from all angles, and I think that this course is really key in going against that grain and really being an incredible tool to build up marriages rather than break them down.
Some of the things we've taught us on this course is that there is hope, and when it's tough, it's all right. We can work through it together, and you get through it, and you have just a deeper bond and a greater sense of becoming one.
We hope that you'll also develop some good new habits. Building a marriage is a process that takes time, but small steps can make a big difference. Our encouragement would be start from where you are.
The exercise in your manual that we want you to do in a moment is an opportunity to take stock of your relationship. Please be honest that the purpose of this exercise is to give you a snapshot of your marriage now to help your discussion.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, the taking stock of your marriage part of the course was it was really good. I mean, it's tough, it's comprehensive, it's quite thorough, and it does make you think about, gosh, is this area of my marriage going really well or not? And I think we sort of
David rated me about 2 marks lower than I rated him on everything. So basically I had a little meltdown when I read the results because I thought, oh no, I'm just a bad wife. And then he explained that actually he's just a hard marker. So once I got over that, we could see actually we rated each other quite similarly, which was quite encouraging. But he was just a bit harder.
Over to you. Please turn to the exercise, taking stock of your marriage. Fill in the scores on your own before discussing what you've each put.
That exercise may have come as a surprise, or even as a bit of a shock to some of you, but don't worry. Your scores can change rapidly, even after today's conversation.
We're going to spend the rest of the session looking at 2 particular things that are critical if we're to build the foundations for a strong marriage. The first is to make time for each other.
If there was one thing we'd want to encourage you to do above all else, it would be to spend special time together as a couple. So often this gets squeezed out of our lives. Here's Rob Parsons again on why time together is so important.
I think because life is so pressurised. And, you know, I've made some bad mistakes in our marriage in the early years, and this was one of them. I used to say, a slower day is coming. To my children, we'll do it later. To Diane, darling, when I've done this and when we've done that. The truth is, the slower day never does come. Most of us create busyness from within. Dan used to tell me, Rob, I think you'd get in a tiz on a desert island. I said to her once, I'd like to get out of the rat race. She said, darling, at heart, I think you're a rat. You love the kind of activity. And I think she's right. But the sad thing is that those of us who live at the centre of that kind of hurricane lifestyle, we do pretty well. It's often those around us who pick up the cost. And often it's relationships that are the first casualty.
Depriving a marriage of quality time together is a bit like depriving a plant of water. Some plants survive longer than others, but eventually without water, they'll wither and die. If a relationship is to thrive and keep growing, we must have regular time alone together.
Special time together as a couple does several things. It keeps the romance and fun alive, deepens our appreciation and understanding of each other, and it ensures we communicate regularly at a meaningful level.
It took us a while to realise it, but Nikki and I discovered that if we're to have this kind of time together, we have to organise it. And that's meant putting aside time to do something enjoyable together once a week. And we call this our marriage time, and we'll refer to this a lot during the course. We'd say it's probably the single most significant thing that we've done over the years to keep our love alive and our marriage growing.
Marriage time should have all the connotations of a date together. It could be during the day or in the evening. Sometimes we make it a special evening together at home, candles on the table, nice music, no TV and so on.
Or we might go out for a meal, go to the cinema, or do something else that we both enjoy. It doesn't have to be expensive. You know, it could be going for a walk or taking a picnic to the park in the summer. These are times to talk at a deeper level in a way that we may not normally have the inclination or the opportunity to do so, as well as being fun.
So, marriage time is not just another evening where one of us is in front of the computer while the other is watching TV, or one of us is paying the bills or making the phone calls while the other mends a broken door handle. Our own experience has been that investing in marriage time protects our marriage from becoming a bit routine.
And marriage time doesn't work if it's only being driven by one person. We've found what works best for us is when we take it in turns to organise it each week. And that also means that we can create surprises for the other one. Of course, you do need to discover whether your partner actually likes surprises.
Where date nights are concerned, we do surprise each other every now and again, and we did have a time where I'll organise one Monday, Dave will organise the next Monday, and they have been really, I love those, they're great. I really look forward to thinking, where am I going to go tonight? They don't have to be anything very expensive, they could just be going out for a drink or going to the park or taking a picnic somewhere, to going to a show or going somewhere, my favourite restaurant, for a meal. So yeah, they've been really important, and that anticipation of, well, where's it going to take me tonight, has been great. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, it does take effort. Again, through the weeks and months, it's very easy for it to become into just a Monday night that we are together. But to make the effort to do something a bit special is well worth it. And you know, Joe really enjoys it when I organise that. We just done one recently, actually, where it was Joe's birthday, and she didn't think anything was happening at all. It's going to be a very boring birthday, and I'd actually organised a weekend away to her somewhere, a house that we go to that's very special to us. And again, on her birthday, she found out she was going for the weekend, and it was that weekend. So
that was really exciting.
Yeah, that's good.
We're under no illusion about how challenging it is to make our marriage time happen. As our lives have got busier, we've had to be more and more determined and deliberate about it over the years. We've discovered we have to plan it, to make it a priority, and to protect it. First of all, planning it. We want to suggest that you plan this time together into your diary or calendar, just like you would any other social or business appointment.
When we plan now for marriage time, we are really organised. Being a teacher myself, I'm very into my diary and highlighting, and everything's allocated a time slot. So I've now allocated Sam a time slot. He's green in my diary. And
that is good, actually. Applying maybe things that we would naturally have done at work, bringing those into the home and bringing those into actually the way that we can organise, you know, ourselves to have time. And I think that was something that before, you know, we could easily organise something at work or a project or, you know, manage other people. But, you know, it almost seemed that skill switched off as soon as we walked in the door at home. And so getting our diaries together every week.
It almost seems quite formal when you do it at first. It seems a bit ridiculous to be sitting down with your husband with your diary and saying, right, when can you fit me in? But that's how it works, to be honest. And with 2 children as well, and the different things that they're doing and running around like crazy, if you don't do it at the beginning of the week, you won't get it in. So it's worked for us.
If marriage time is in the diary or calendar and a friend asks you around next Thursday, it's so much easier to say, I'm sorry, we can't. We're busy on Thursday. And we've made it a golden rule never to change our marriage time without consulting the other.
Second, make marriage time a priority. This means it's the most important commitment we stick to every week. It takes priority over other demands, our work, over going out with friends, playing sport, decorating the house, even over our children. Couples who've done the marriage course say to us again and again that prioritising marriage time is consistently the most difficult thing that they struggle to do, but the most important in terms of how it impacts their relationship.
After 43 years, you think, well, we've spent all this time together. Why do we need marriage time? But of course we do, you know, because we realise that when you actually spend time together, talking together and doing things together, time that's just for you, it's special and it's different from just time when you're busy doing all sorts of stuff with all sorts of people.
Third, we have to protect it against whatever conspires to stop this time happening. Whether that's other people, the computer, the TV, that's a big one for many people, or just tiredness. For us, it's been the phone. It can so easily rule our lives. So we now turn the answering machine on and our mobiles off during our marriage time.
There'll be lots of times when we feel, why bother? We're too tired, it's too much of an effort, or the last time may not have seemed to go very well. But even if that's the case, we'd encourage you to stick with it. Effort and creativity are needed in every marriage. And if you think about it, effort and creativity are what many people pour in at the start of their relationship, but not necessarily into their marriage. It's then that intimacy can be lost.
It's very easy to lose intimacy due to lifestyle, work, kids. I suppose for me, it's the small things. Work really was my main thing. I had to come home from work and work again and not spend the time together finding out what June's been up to, how she feels. So it's very, very easy to lose intimacy, would you say so?
Yeah, it is, because if you think about it, when you're courting and you're falling in love with each other, you see each other all the time. You can't wait to get on the phone with each other. And for us, we had a commuter courtship because we worked in Leeds and lived in Huddersfield. So we used to meet each other on the train platform, travelled together to Leeds on the train, and he'd meet me after work. And we spent all that time, and then we were together all weekend. And when you get married, you don't do that. You don't spend all that time together. So that is one of the key areas that you can lose intimacy in a marriage, is just by not spending that time talking to each other and laughing together. And we used to laugh. In fact, that was one of the biggest things that attracted me to Eric, because he used to have me in stitches. And then once you get married, things creep in and you don't laugh as much. And you do start to lose that intimacy. And you've got to work at it to get it back.
We want to give you a few minutes now to turn and tell each other about what have been the most special times that you've shared together as a couple. And be specific and talk about where and when those times were, and what you were doing and why they were special to you. Take it in turns, and you may hear something that you had no idea about. A second pattern of behaviour that forms part of the foundations of a strong marriage is to nurture each other. Nurturing each other involves seeking to meet each other's emotional needs, such as for affection, for encouragement, support, comfort, and so on.
We all have a longing to be loved and to be known by another person. It's as though there's an empty space inside that needs to be filled up with love.
When that space is empty, we feel lonely or alone. A new kitchen, promotion at work, or a holiday in the Caribbean won't fill up that space. This is because we've been made for close relationships with other people, capable of giving and receiving love.
We see this illustrated in the first chapters of the Bible, where Adam is described as being in a perfect environment and in a perfect relationship with God. But God said, it's not good for the man to be alone, and he creates Eve. When Adam's presented with Eve, he says with great excitement, "Here at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Adam is delighted that there's someone like him who can understand him, to whom he can relate. When we're known intimately and when we feel deeply loved, that space is filled up and we no longer feel alone. But that doesn't happen automatically in a marriage. When the initial infatuation wears off, we can start to feel lonely again.
As we give each other emotional support, we keep refilling that space inside. We're all born with emotional needs. You only have to look at young children to see this. They don't just need to be fed and kept warm, they need physical affection. They need to be held and hugged. They need comfort when they're hurt or upset. They thrive on a parent's approval when they've done things well. Adults are much better at disguising it, but whatever our age, we all have those emotional needs. An 80-year-old still needs affection, comfort, and encouragement.
There are two ways we can act in marriage. We can either be reactive or proactive. Being reactive is when we focus on each other's shortcomings, on what irritates us about our husband or wife's behaviour. Being proactive is when we focus on their needs. This draws us together because then we both feel loved. And when we feel loved, we feel like loving.
We've learnt a lot about meeting emotional needs from a couple called David and Teresa Ferguson, who run great courses on marriage. I remember David saying 30 years into their marriage, for the first 15 years, I focused on Teresa's faults and my needs. For the last 15 years, I focused on my faults and Teresa's needs. And our marriage has been transformed.
Sometimes we give what we most want to receive. But often our partner's needs will be different to our own, and we can miss what's most important to them. Seeking to love in the wrong way can lead to frustration and irritation instead of feeling loved. It's like trying to fill that empty space inside, but mainly missing. That's what happens when we don't recognise each other's main needs.
I thought I'd got to look after Pete, I'd got to show him love by preparing the food, by keeping the house as it should be, or as I thought, and that he'd actually realise that I loved him because of those things.
Whereas actually, encouraging words that say to me that I'm doing okay were really what I was looking for. And that was something that we found out about on the course.
Needs change over time. What was most important when we were going out or when we were first married may be different now. And we can't assume our husband or wife automatically knows our desires. We must tell each other.
You're going to find out how well you know each other's needs through the next exercise, Knowing Me, Knowing You. Look at the different needs and desires listed in the manual. Choose the 3 that are most important for you, and then see if you can work out which 3 are most important for your partner. Do this on your own, and when you've both finished, compare what you've each put.
Don't worry if you didn't guess any of your partner's top 3 needs. You've learnt the most this session. At this point, we want to mention the homework that you'll see in your manual. Now, don't panic. This isn't like school. We won't be taking it in and marking it. But we highly recommend that you do set aside some time to do it, as it reinforces the topics that we look at each session.
I think doing the homework was a really good thing. You know, in the evenings after the course, we'd often carry on our discussion all the way home on the bus, and then during the week at some point we needed to do the homework as well, which was a good thing because it made us remember what had happened on the evening of the course, and carry forward discussions and, you know, connect each week together.
I definitely did. I think it was a case of reapplying what you'd learned earlier on in the week, so that it wasn't just a once a week thing, that it carried on, and it really sort of, for me, made it feel that this isn't just something that you learn and closet it away in a box. It's something that you apply every day, all the time. Definitely, yeah.
We also recommend you bring your diary or calendar each week so that you can book in some marriage time. To close each session, we're going to say a short prayer. So do please stay just as you are while I pray. Thank you, Lord, that you are the God of love, the God who created marriage for us. Thank you that you've given us to each other as husband and wife. We ask that you would help us grow in our understanding of each other and recognise each other's needs so that our love would deepen. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed this first session. It's great that you've come, and we look forward to you joining us again for the next session. Goodbye.
Goodbye.